Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasts.
What started out as a simple morning family hike turns into devastation just days later when the entire family is found lifeless on the trail. We all dream of those sun-drenched vistas and challenging climbs, but when the sun is blazing on your body, the mercury rises, and so do the risks. For this young family, the sun wasn't just hot. It was a relentless, silent killer, transforming a planned adventure into a scene of unimaginable tragedy. Welcome back to Tragedy with a View. Welcome back. I am your host, Kayla, and very quickly, I need to thank a couple people for joining Patreon. Mindy, who I think joined like a month ago, and I don't remember that I gave her a shout out like I'm trying to do for new members. And then we also gained Shannon last week, because last week I try not to shout out on subscriber only episodes since there's only like a specific group of people who are listening to those episodes. I want everyone to hear. So Shannon, welcome. I also want to thank my aunt for joining as a Apple subscriber. And the only reason that I know she joined is because she texted me and told me that she started listening to my podcast with the most gruesome episode I've ever done. And so kudos to her for doing that and pulling through. And if you're still listening to my episodes after that story, thank you so much. Outside of that, we still have merch available, and I've also got something exciting planned for in a few months. So there's going to be some extra episodes that are released in the month of October. There's some exciting things coming up this fall still. So keep your ears open for when those are announced. As a former yoga instructor, one of my favorite things to do is to explore other instructors' styles of teaching. Many teachers have their own language and cue process that makes the class truly unique, and for some, it becomes their way of honoring themselves. And for teachers like 31-year-old Ellen Chung, who had a life-changing event which led her down the path of yoga, their classes tend to be especially deep and connective. Somewhere around 2010, Ellen suffered from an accident which left her dealing with a traumatic brain injury and ultimately led her to a yoga practice. But this wasn't enough for her. Yoga changed her life, and she wanted to help others open the door to positive change as well. And so when she became a teacher, she taught at Satori Yoga Studio in San Francisco until they were forced to close in 2020 due to the pandemic. With this, and with her husband, 45-year-old Jonathan Gerrish, they moved to Mariposa, California, about 168 miles away. Jonathan previously worked for Google and Snapchat as an engineer, and when they moved, they purchased several properties to manage and start to build their new life together in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada range. Together, they had a 1-year-old daughter, Orelai Chung Gerrish, who they called Miju, and an 8-year-old Aussie Akita mix named Oski. Even with their family growing and careers changing, they were still very active. For help, they hired a babysitter for a few days a week, but on the days that she did not come stay with Miju, Ellen and Jonathan were off adventuring the new and beautiful region they called home. The Sierra Nevada National Forest is located on the west side of the Sierra Nevada range that stretches 400 miles or 644 kilometers in the California mountains. Established in 1905 from an earlier forest reserve, it encompasses over 1.3 million acres across Fresno, Madera, and Mariposa counties. The forest features a dramatic range of elevations from 900 feet or 275 meters in the rolling oak-covered foothills to nearly 14,000 feet or 4,270 meters at its highest peak. This varied terrain includes heavily forested middle elevation slopes and the starkly beautiful alpine landscapes of the high Sierras. Glacial erosions have shaped much of the high elevation areas, creating U-shaped valleys, cirques, moraines, and thousands of glacial lakes. The Sierra National Forest is bordered by significant natural landmarks, including Yosemite National Park to the north, Kings Canyon National Park to the southeast, and Inyo and Sequoia National Forest. It is home to two giant redwood groves, Nelder and McKinley, which house some of the largest sequoias in the world, several major rivers, including the San Joaquin and Kings Rivers, which drain the western slopes of the forest. The lower elevation is blanketed in trees reaching towards the sky and to the high Sierras, or in the area above the tree line, you can find stunning views which make you feel like you can see from sea to sea. There is plenty for outdoor enthusiasts to do in the area, from water sports like skiing and kayaking and fishing, to hiking and running, mountain biking, and longer multi-day camping trips through the backwoods. The forest contains 5 wilderness areas for those who love to get out there, and for those who appreciate nature from a little bit farther back, there are 2 scenic byways that you can drive along and enjoy some still spectacular views. In the northwest section of Sierra Nevada National Park is Heights Cove Loop Trail, which is, according to All Trails, who we all know how reliable they are. It is a 7.1 mile or 11.5 kilometer out and back style trail that runs parallel to the South Fork of the Merced River. While the trail is considered moderate, there are narrow trails and steep drop-offs that make it a bit more challenging than just moderate. Starting out at an elevation of 3,800 feet or 1,160 meters before dropping 2,000 feet or 610 meters in elevation, this is a popular hike in certain times of the year, especially the spring when the wildflowers are in full bloom. In 2018, this trail was scorched by a wildfire that destroyed the brush that canopied the trail and provided a much-needed source of shade in the blistering summer sun. Once at the river, this is the halfway point. Instead of turning around and hiking back out the way you came, you can continue along the river for a time where a new trail picks up called the Savage Lundy Trail. This trail takes you over 3 miles or 5 kilometers, where you have to climb up nearly 2,000 feet or 610 meters via a series of steep switchbacks. At the end of Savage Lundy, the trail meets up with Heights Cove again to complete the loop. In total, hikers are looking at about 8 miles or 13 kilometers of hiking, and while the summer sun is now hot without the shade, the river offers a perfect opportunity to get water on the body and cool down, and when you bring a water purifier, you get the added bonus of refilling your bottles and bladders before you start your hike out. And very quickly, when I say bottles and bladders, I don't mean your physical body's bladder. I mean like the water bladder that you have in your backpack. But you can fill up your body's bladder too if you want. You do you. The Savage Lundy Trail is as savage as the name implies. Due to its south-southeast orientation, it is subject to direct sunlight at all times of day. And due to the 2018 fires, there is no shade. The ground temperatures tend to be higher than the air temperatures surrounding you, which does not give any relief in the summer. This is a difficult trail at any time of year, but it is particularly dangerous in the summer. On August 15th, 2021, that was exactly what Ellen and Jonathan were about to learn. Waking early to set out before the real heat came in for the day, they grabbed their pack and brought with them 2 sippy cups for Miju, a full 2.5 liter or 85-ounce water reservoir, and a few snacks. Ellen had also packed in her bag a snake bite kit, some bug spray, a first aid kit, and extra diapers. Loading Miju and Oski up in Jonathan's gray Ford F-150 Raptor, they set out into the mild mid-70-degree sunshine for Heights Cove parking lot that was only a few miles from their home. They had researched the trail recently and were attracted to this challenging nature and being able to spend time with their family and nature. With their activity level, they expected the hike to take about 5 hours. At about 7:30 a.m., they parked and got everything around and were hiking by 7:45. The temperature was 76 degrees Fahrenheit or 24 degrees Celsius. They made their way toward the river, and after about 1.5 hours, they finally made it. Stopping to drink their water, give Miju some snacks, everything was going exactly to plan. The sun was now beating down on them, and the temperature had soared to 109 degrees Fahrenheit or 42 degrees Celsius. It was getting hot and uncomfortable, not only for them, but also for their thick-coated, long-haired dog. Fast forward to the next day, their babysitter arrived at Ellen and Jonathan's home at 11 a.m. to care for Miju. When she arrived, no one was home. The diaper bag that Ellen carried was sitting by the door, and their work cell phones and wallets were where they normally kept them. This was odd, though, but she didn't panic. Calling the building's construction manager, they began to call and text people who might know where Ellen or Jonathan were. Everyone knew how active that this family was, so no one was worried when reply after reply came through that no one knew the whereabouts of Ellen, Jonathan, Miju, or Oski. Beginning to drive around, the babysitter checked their properties and normal areas for taking the family, and after about 12 hours of not finding them, she finally called the police to report them missing at 11 p.m. And immediately a search is initiated. At 2 a.m. on August 17th, so about 3 hours after they are reported missing, the gray Raptor was found at Heights Cove Trailhead. A more thorough search of the area is initiated, and 7.5 hours later, the first of what would become a senseless tragedy is found. At 9:30 a.m., the radio cracked with the confirmation of a body being found. But it wasn't just one. The bodies of Oski, Miju, and Jonathan were found about 1.6 miles away from the parking lot down the switchbacks of Savage Lundy Trail. But Ellen was not with them. It wasn't until about an hour later, while others searched the rest of the trail, that one member of the search and rescue team noticed a disturbance in the ground above where Jonathan, Miju, and Oski had been found. After making his way up to the area, he found Ellen, who had also perished. It seemed that instead of taking the trail, she tried to take a shortcut and climb her way out directly up rather than take the switchbacks up. So that way she would be able to reach the parking lot faster and therefore help faster. This also tells us that Jonathan likely declined faster than Ellen. Whether the decision to split up was due to Ellen pushing ahead for help while Jonathan stayed behind with Miju and Oski, or if Miju, Oski, and Jonathan all perished before Ellen pushed on herself, will forever be unknown. But we know that there were clear cognitive decline far before the family perished, due to the fact that 100 feet or 30 meters down the trail, Jonathan's truck key was found laying in the dirt. They had no idea that they wouldn't even be able to get into the truck once they made it there. And while search and rescue were the first ones on the scene, they still found nothing that conclusively explained why they died. The area was not showing any indication of a struggle. There were no bruises or cuts or signs of foul play. And while investigators worked hard to find answers to what happened to Jonathan, Ellen, Miju, and Oski, the public went wild with theories, as they usually do. From inhaling poisonous amounts of cyanide, carbon monoxide, or carbon dioxide from nearby mines, to drinking water contaminated with toxic algae, more sinister possibilities sprang up, like that they were poisoned by the drug cartel, or Google Jonathan's prior employer hired a hitman to take the family out.
Scottish Murders is hosted by me, Dawn, and is a multi-award shortlisted victim-focused podcast covering the murders of those from or living in Scotland. We tell each victim's story in a respectful, sensitive, unsensational and unopinionated way. So why not join us wherever you listen to your podcasts and ensure you never miss an episode of Scottish Murders.
Considering that there was nothing at the scene to indicate a crime, the hitman and drug cartel theories were quickly dismissed. Though, admittedly, this area and that time of year seems like the perfect time to commit a crime, considering that the family laid there for nearly 2 days on the trail and no one had been there to find them until search and rescue showed up. So it seems like it's a very secluded area, and probably due to the time of year, not many people go there. This was also right in the height of COVID and the pandemic, and so there also might have been a lot of people who were just still staying at home. Investigators went to the nearby mine and did not see anything that showed anyone had been in it in a long time. And besides that, there were no toxic amounts of gas being emitted from the mine that would have caused the family to walk away and perish later. Both the water in the Merced River and what was left, the few drops of water in the reservoir that Ellen had with her, were tested for contamination, and both came back clean and fine to drink. Finally, 2 months later, on October 21st, an 80-page report was released that was put together by the 30 agencies that provided their services in this investigation. In the end, what killed the Chung Gerrish family was a combination of hyperthermia and dehydration. Hyperthermia is the opposite of hypothermia, so instead of getting too cold for your body to be able to maintain a livable body temperature, one would become too warm to be able to regulate their body temperature and be able to cool down on its own. Couple this with dehydration, and death would have been swift, but they would have seen it coming. And this was concluded once investigators got a hold of the couple's cell phone records. This was confirmed based on the text and call history, along with their location tracking. The family began their hike at 7:44 a.m., arriving at the river around 9:05 a.m. They stayed there until about 10:29 a.m., but by this point, the temperature would have soared into the triple digits. At 11:56 a.m., a text was sent out that read, "Can you help us? On Savage Lundy Trail, heading back to Heights Cove Trail. No water, overheating with baby." But the recipient never received the text due to the poor cell phone service. Then Jonathan placed a call at 12:09 and then 4 calls within a minute of each other at 12:35 p.m. None of these calls went through, again because they had no service, and none of these calls were to 911. And as a side note, for people who are not aware, I have an iPhone, so I'm specifically talking about iPhones here, but the Apple SOS lack of signal or lack of service notification might mean that you don't have service to be able to connect to the internet or make normal calls or get normal text out, but they do still connect to other services in the event that you're calling 911. So even if that SOS is featured, or even if that SOS is showing up at the top of your phone indicating that you don't have service, if you call 911, the call is still going to go through. I don't know what that looks like for Androids, but I know that with Apple, that is something that they actively worked on to have available. Looking back, heat exposure is a clear explanation, but still, many did not believe that it is true. They ignored the fact that many experienced rangers warned the public to stay away from this area during the heat of the day. If they themselves are forced to go there, they will hike down in the morning, hang out by the river during the midday, and then hike out as the sun dips low enough on the horizon that it casts a little bit of shade. Besides this, there is no reason for authorities to cover up something if something else happened. There would be nothing for them to gain from that. Doctors who work in the extreme heat and with extreme heat victims have found that if a human is not able to cool down and suffers from heat stroke, death can follow within a few hours. Oski, the family dog, was examined by a vet, and his cause of death was also probably from heat-related issues, though a necropsy was not performed, so his death is officially listed as undetermined. And while heat-related cases are increasing in frequency as the Earth's weather patterns shift and there is this general warm-up, this was the first hyperthermia confirmed case in the area in over 20 years. The United States alone sees hundreds of heat-related cases each year where the human body is just unable to cool down. And as I just noted, with climate change, those numbers are only growing. Being unable to cool yourself down by getting into water or drinking water or getting in some shade, the overheated body starts to take drastic action to try to compensate, resulting in the swelling of the brain and other organs that could lead to potentially permanent damage. While children, mentally disabled, and elderly are most at risk, healthy and physically active adults also succumb to heat illnesses. There is almost this idea that just because you are young and fit, you can handle more and push harder, but that just is not the case when the body gets too warm. Where in hypothermia, movement can often help warm the body up, movement will not help here. The first step in knowing when to seek shelter, shade, water, or help is to know the signs of heat-related stress or heat exhaustion. If you experience any of these symptoms, the time to start rehydrating and to get into shade or to get inside somewhere where it's cool is now. A person who is heating up too much will often experience cramps, headaches, dizziness, nausea and vomiting, high heart rate, red, sweaty or clammy skin, confusion, lightheadedness, and the loss of consciousness. There's muscle pains and muscle spasms, weakness, and fatigue. And by the time you feel thirsty, you are already in the beginning stages of dehydration. Now, keep in mind that you don't need to experience all of these symptoms to be suffering from the heat. Even one of these symptoms is enough to indicate that something is off balance in the body. And if you find that you or maybe somebody that you are with has stopped sweating, is losing consciousness, or is getting very confused, this is a sign that you need help immediately. High humidity makes it harder for the body to cool down because there is so much moisture in the air that it doesn't evaporate off the skin easily. Of course, there are steps that you can take to decrease the potential of things going wrong, such as telling people your plans, where you are going and when you will be back, and if you do not arrive, or contact them, when to alert authorities. Some of the information in this episode is going to sound very similar to the information that was in the subscriber-only episode just last week, such as telling people where you're going and when you're going and when you're going to be back. And when you create your plan, you should also include a turnaround point where if you are not where you wanted or things aren't going as smooth as you thought that they would be, you turn around at that point, whether that point is by location or by time. You never rely on your phone's weather app for accurate weather. It has gotten much better, but sites such as the NOAA will take a detailed account of the geography and how that plays a role in the weather and give you a much better and much more accurate view of what the weather is going to be in the coming day. And then stop and talk to locals who might be able to warn you about the most dangerous parts of the trail. These things might not be listed online, but finding reviews of trails is another good but less specific option. Specifically when it comes to hiking in hot weather, taking enough water is vital. On a mild day, an adult needs about half a liter or 16 ounces per hour, whereas on a hot day, like the one in the triple digits that Jonathan and Ellen were hiking in, each person would need a minimum of 1 liter or 33 fluid ounces per hour. If you need a visual of that, that's about a Stanley cup of water per person per hour. And so when you think about that, Ellen and Jonathan should have had about 2 of their water bladders that were 2.5 liters for each person. And then there's also Oski and Miju, and how are they getting water? It was noted that they did not have a water bowl for the dog, and so I'm guessing that they just figured that the river would be enough, and unfortunately, that was not correct thinking. Knowing ways to cool down the body are also vital, such as sitting in shade, whether it's a man-made structure or a natural structure, it is the same. Sitting in the shade for roughly 30 minutes to get out of the direct sunlight, and if there's a breeze, that's even better. Wearing light colors can help you stay cooler as it doesn't absorb solar radiation, making them as much as 30 degrees cooler as black clothing. And as a black clothing lover, I'm going to keep that in mind this summer. In addition to light colors in the summer, cotton helps to absorb water and will hold on to it longer, which is a great way to keep the body cool through evaporation. But also to note that in cooler temperatures, cotton is not recommended because it does hold on to that water and it will keep it pressed against your skin longer. Because water on the skin helps to pull heat from the body as it evaporates, when you are too hot, having an outside source of help to assist the body in this process is extremely beneficial. This could also be accomplished by putting on a wet t-shirt, similarly dunking a hat or bandana into the water and then wrapping it around your head or your neck. You can submerge the body in water, which is generally cooler than the outside temperature. This does not apply to thermal features. I don't feel like I truly need to say that, but I'm going to do it anyways. Getting your armpits, neck, groin, and wrists and ankles wet as well, because the blood vessels are very close to the surface of the skin, and this can help cool you down by circulating that cooler blood through the rest of your body. As a side note, for ultra-loving runners like me, the Western States was just run. It is an ultra running race that this year in particular, it was so hot that they had kid pools at aid stations that were just filled with water and a ton of ice. And you could watch as the runners were coming into their aid stations. They were, taking off their vests that had their things on and just like plopping down into these pools and submerging as much of their bodies as they could to cool down as much as they could before they continued on with the race, which I think is unique way of doing things, but I digress. Additionally, you can also use a paper fan or really anything that's flat and fannable to fan yourself. Consume extra water if you feel the need, but be sure to balance this by also eating some food so that way you're getting the salts and electrolytes that your body's sweating out. And also learn from other people's mistakes. I've said this a few times that I hate looking at people who have suffered and kind of pointing the finger at them, but in almost every single one of these stories, the people who are suffering have done something that doesn't help them. And in this case in particular, they did go out into really hot temperatures and they were unprepared. Whether that was just from a lack of knowledge or a lack of understanding, we will never know. But the power and peril the sun and heat provides is dangerous. Ignoring the heat isn't just discomfort, it is a gamble with severe and irreversible consequences. The mountains, deserts, and forests are magnificent, but they demand our respect and our vigilance, especially as the sun blazes across our skin. And as summer takes hold, go explore, but prioritize safety and preparation for the conditions you will undoubtedly face. Thank you for listening. We'll talk next week. Bye. What is life without close calls with disaster? Thank you for listening. Don't forget to follow the podcast to be the first to hear the now weekly episodes. Join our subscription on Patreon, Apple, or Spotify today and immerse yourself in the haunting beauty of the great outdoors. For around $4 a month, you'll get exclusive access to the first episode of each month and early access to all other episodes, showcasing the morbid and mysterious side of nature. Please reach out with story requests, and if you have your own story, please email tragedywithaview@gmail.com for a chance to have your story featured on a later episode. Again, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.